want to share with you one of the most impactful moments I've had in a long, long time. Have you ever read a passage of scripture and you're like, well, that was written to me? A few years ago, I read through the Gospel of Matthew. I took forever to read it. And I read the story about how Jesus, he left his home in Nazareth and went to Capernaum and called some disciples and trained them. And in the last part of the Gospel of Matthew, it's this section on the end of the world, that it's coming, that he's going to initiate it, that people are going to stand before God and give account for their lives, that there is no escaping this moment, and that people who are going to stand before God are a lot like the people who are in this story, people like you and me. Matthew 25, verse 14, this parable begins, "The kingdom of heaven will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. To one he gave 5 bags of gold, to another 2 bags, and to another 1 bag, each according to his ability, and then he went off on a journey." So everybody see what's happening here? Businessman is going off, going to be going for a long time, grabs 3 of his most trusted people and said, "I need you to manage this money for me." So he leaves. The man who had received 5 bags of gold went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 bags more. So he had 10. So also the one with 2 bags of gold gained 2 more. He had 4. But the man who had received 1 bag went off and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5 and said, "Master, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I have gained 5 more." And his master replied, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness." Well, the man with 2 bags of gold did the same thing. "Master," he said, "you entrusted me with 2 bags of gold. I gained 2 more." And his master replied, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness." And then the man who had received 1 bag of gold came. "Master," he said, "I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid and went out and hid your gold in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you." His master replied, "You wicked, lazy servant. So you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. Well, then you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers, so that when I return, you would have received it back with interest. And so take the bag of gold from him and give it to the one who has 10 bags. For whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. And throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." Let me share a couple things that will help us understand this story. The first is, previous Bible translators used to call this the parable of the talents. And I'm glad the new NIV translation got it right, the parable of the bags of gold. So many Bible translators call it the bag of talents because the King James Version from, get this, 1611 translated it wrongly, the bag of talents. Unto him he gave 5 talents, to another 2. The word from Greek, talanton, is a measure of unit. It's a sum of money. How much? New Testament scholar Grant Osborne says a talent was the amount of a weight a soldier could carry on his back. and referred to 75 to 100 pounds of gold. So this is nearly $2 million we're talking about in one talenton. And so I'm glad they fixed this, because whenever I used to teach this before, people would say, oh, to the one he gave talents, I have talents. Like, I have talents. Like, when I have taught my dog that when I whistle, is that the worst whistle ever? Seriously, that's my whistle. Here, let me give it to you again. She'll come to me, right? Or I can roll my tongue. Lean over to the person next to you and roll your tongue. See if they can do that. Can you roll your tongue? If you can't roll your tongue, we're going to throw you out into the darkness where there will be weeping and that. And here's the second thing I want to point out. The NIV translators didn't translate correctly the word servant. Verse 14 says the kingdom of heaven is like a man going on a journey and called his servants. Sort of like sounds like to us some scene out of Downton Abbey, right? Mr. Carson, please prepare my bath. I would like to have a tea later, right? It's not at all what this is saying. The word that Jesus uses here in this parable is the Greek word doulos, which is the Greek word for slave. An actual slave. Someone who sold themselves into slavery, was purchased as a slave, was captured as a slave. Matthew 25:14 says, and he called his doulos, his slaves. It literally meant Jesus didn't say some rich guy went on a trip and gathered his 3 certified financial planners and said, I'm going to bug out for a while. I need you to manage my wealth. He got his 3 most trusted slaves. Now, the NIV understandably refused to translate this slave and called it servants because they wanted to be sensitive to people who come from a background where it's obvious why they did that. But choosing to translate it slaves or servants instead of slaves robs us of the power of the story that Jesus told. And so let me just go through verse by verse real quick. The kingdom of heaven will be like a man going on a journey. In this story, the person going on the journey is Jesus. He is the guy that leaves and goes on a journey. He says that his disciples are slaves. Slaves was a popular term for a self-designation for Christians. The Apostle Paul would say, I, Paul, a slave of Christ Jesus. And it wasn't condoning slavery, it was reappropriating the language of slavery as a way of saying that we are completely owned by Jesus, sold out. So to the one he gave 5 bags of gold, to the other 2 bags of gold, each according to his journey. Now, let me ask you this question. What bags of gold have you been given? Have you been given 5 bags of gold? Have you been given 2 bags of gold? Or are you a 1 bag of gold person? What do you think it is? Like, you probably know some people and you're like, yeah, that's definitely a 5 bag of gold. Now, if we're referring to talents, like with me in basketball, I'm a 5 talent guy. All right, LeBron, get out of my way. Obviously, I'm like a -5 on basketball, right? The reality is the talenton, the bags of gold, if you live in the United States, you are a 5 talent person. The master has come to you and grabbed 5 100-pound bags of gold and dropped it in your lap. Safety, the army, education, wealth, roads, opportunity, health, family, neighbors, the economy, everything that we have been blessed with, every person in this room is a 5 bag of gold person. Our gifts, our abilities, and our opportunities and platforms for influence. Everything that he's given then, He expects us to use it. Now, we're finishing today this series called Asking for a Friend. And we've been talking about how Christians in the age of COVID have gone AWOL. Getting used to being separated from community, having done a cost-benefit analysis of if I don't spend time with Christians, then I'm going to have more time to myself, not realizing that the equation is sort of like exercise. If I stop exercising, I'm going to have more time to myself, but the long-term results are going to be what? And so in the age of COVID, when roughly 2/3 of Christians across our country have said, I don't need to attend church, we've talked about why being a part of a corporate public worship service is incredibly important. Now, for those of you who are watching at home and you have physical ailments or you have reasons why, I was talking to a person yesterday, because we don't have people wear masks, his family is not vaccinated. I'm like, I get that. Okay, and well, you're going to continue to join us here. But when that situation changes, the expectation is corporate worship is important. We talked about being a part of groups last week. Lisa did a great job talking about why it's important, what groups do to us. We talked about why we need a relationship with God. We talked about why we need a daily time with God. And today we're talking about the question, why do I need to serve? Starting in the local church and then moving beyond. And so the answer to that is easy. Every disciple of Jesus has been given an enormous pile of gifts, money, resources, ingenuity, and opportunities. And he expects us to use that to make more and better disciples and to not squander what he has given us. Starting in the local church. If you are a disciple of Jesus and you are not serving, you are the one bag of gold person that has taken all of these blessings that Jesus has given you, and you are now taking these and burying them into the ground. Let it make it very clear. You are the one talent person. And so let me ask you, are you using your gifts and money and resources and opportunities to make more and better disciples? Do you serve in the church? Do you serve in the community as a disciple of Jesus? I have a friend that is a youth pastor in another church that calls middle school students pre-people. I've always thought that that's hysterical because, first of all, I've had 3 pre-people before. And, you know, you're having this thoughtful conversation with your middle schooler, and you're thinking he or she is just bright, right? Like, oh, you're getting it. And then literally 20 minutes later, you're like, oh yeah, she's a pre-person, right? They're a pre-person. Like mentally, physically, psycho-emotionally, all of that, right? I also love that because it takes quite a sense of humor to love serving middle school students, right? You have to love the drama. You have to love the fact that you'll go up and you'll have a conversation with a middle schooler. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, ew, oh, you all right? You just got to love the ability for them to completely size you down to here. The put downs, the drama, the relationships, all of that. You have to just love the fact that here is a bag of gold that you're holding. And right now they're a quirky pre-person, but if you hang in there and mentor and help that pre-person, this young boy can be an incredible man of God. All of us can look back, those of us who are disciples of Jesus, at a handful of people where like, that person was there for me. I remember my youth group leader. He came to me when I was ordained as a pastor at the church where I grew up as a kid. And he said, I want to apologize to you because we went away on a youth retreat and we spent the night, this was back in the day where you didn't have a phone, right? And so you had these boom boxes where you had to record stuff on tape. And so this is in middle school, he pulled together a group of us, boys, and we belched and farted all night long into this tape. And so all night long, anytime someone had to belch or fart or anything, right, we recorded it. And at the end, in the morning, we were just overjoyed at this soundtrack of belching and farting sounds, right? And I remember he came to me, this was as an adult, I am a pastor now, and he said, I want to apologize to you. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. You don't understand. You got down on our level and you farted in a boombox with us. Like, that was the greatest thing you could have ever done to a middle schooler. I love him for that. I love the fact that there are men and women here in our congregation that in whatever realm they find themselves are showing up and are serving. And more oftentimes than not, here was a guy that I was in middle school. Some 10 years later, he wasn't quite sure whether or not he made an impact in my life. 10 years later, he finally found out. Dude, you're one of the reasons I became a Christian. You're one of the reasons I'm a pastor now. And it's the same thing with you. I see in this story a challenge and an opportunity. The one is the challenge. The challenge is we're all going to stand before Jesus and give an account for our lives. None of us are going to escape this. Jesus has given us gifts and abilities and resources, and as his slaves, he expects us to do exactly what he asked us to do, to invest these in the lives of other people, starting in the local church and then emanating out into the community. But the opportunity is, when we give ourselves fully to this, this is not a net negative, like, oh, if I don't work out this week, I'm going to save 7 hours. This math doesn't work in the kingdom. Because if you, let's say you do serve 7 hours a week in student ministry, you're going to lose 7 hours, but the net positive would be as if you had that 7 hours and more, because you're going to become fully alive. Serving doesn't add more stress, it takes away stress. Serving doesn't make you anything more than joyful. It's fun, it's an adventure. This week I was scrolling through old photos of my kids. Do any of you do this? You go through old photos on your phones? You will, if your kids will get old enough to where you actually wish you had more photos. But occasionally I'll go and I'll scroll through these old photos. The other thing that I do is I'll save text messages. You ever do that when you get a nice text message for someone? I will screenshot that and I will hold on to that. Same thing as if you sent me a negative text message. I will screenshot that and hold that over your head for your life. No. I just screenshot. I want to screenshot positive things. If my kids are, we have a family group chat and we're sending texts and that sort of thing, I will occasionally, I'll just screenshot. So anyway, I'm going through these pictures and I'm seeing these screenshots, and I'm going through this pile of photos where my daughter, she's a senior in college. She's at a Christian college, and the college places a high value on serving. And rather than, it's your senior year, spring break, you're going off to Panama City or whatever, they're going to serve. So they went to Tanzania for their spring break. And I'm reading through these text messages and pictures, and it just brought back memories of my daughter doing that. She said, today, this is an update, I went to a baby rescue center similar to Bob Goff's in Mogadishu, the one that we helped support and build, and learned a lot about it and why babies are left on the street. And we just loved on these babies for 6 straight days, and it was so fun. Mom, you would have absolutely loved it. There were 60 infants, and we would just feed and pray and read, and there were these volunteers that go in and then they rescue these babies and they hold on to them, and they drive as far as 3 hours to go back into these villages and pick babies up and bring it back to Nema village. And 1 in 9 Tanzanian women die during childbirth. And so she's just going on. So this is one day. Another day she updates, she says, hey, I just want to let you know, I volunteered, we're in a Maasai village, and I volunteered to be a part of the poop group. And we worked on a bathroom of a Maasai school, and we had to use elephant poop to rebuild the walls holding it up. So at first, in the Maasai, for those of you who haven't been to Kenya yet to visit our mission there, the Maasai are nomadic herders, and they have these circle villages, and all of their homes are made out of poop, which is just gross. So at first, I had gloves on while kneading and smearing on the elephant poop, but then my one glove ripped in half, and me, Millie, and Lily all took our gloves off, and they were really good sports and insisted on doing it with me. And instead, then we used our bare hands for the next hour to knead the elephant poop into a huge pile and then smother the bathroom with the poop. And this was a video screenshot of them leaning over into the pile of the poop, and here they are. The next picture here is they're kneading into a pile of poop. And no doubt there's someone probably watching right now, you're thinking, you couldn't pay me $1 million to spread elephant poop all over a village. And knowing my daughter, she'd probably say the same thing. You couldn't pay her $1 million to do it either. And I think that's sort of like the spirit of people who, it just doesn't make sense why you would give up a weekend or a Sunday night or a Wednesday night or come in on Sunday morning. It just doesn't make sense that you would give time for free to serve people as a slave. That is just as weird in an unbeliever's mind as rubbing poop all over yourself and putting it on a Maasai wall. See, I hear these stories from group leaders and greeters and security team members and like group leaders for kids. That serving changes our lives before it changes other people's lives. Like there's something really cool. Like there's this picture at the end of Matthew. It's not like, you better serve or your life's gonna suck and I'm gonna be pissed off at you, and when you get to heaven, I'm gonna send you to hell. That's not the picture at all. It's like, my people get to go and turn the culture upside down and to serve the most unfortunate people who have gone through terrible circumstances. And these people are going to serve, and they're going to do it with smiles on their faces, and they're going to find joy in meaning and purpose, and depression will melt, and anxiety will melt, and relationships will come together. And what will happen is these people will be incredibly cool and interesting and beautiful. My people. And so that's why we serve. Like there's this vision of this more interesting version of yourself that is beyond our natural self-absorption and our natural pitying of ourselves and what we're going through. And I'm so pissed off at you, God, because why would you let this happen in my life? And now I'm just angry, and I'm just going to go through life with a big frown on my face. And Jesus is like, you want to fix that? You need to start serving people. We'll fix that thing on your face. See, there's some practical reasons that we ought to serve too. Number one is when you serve, you're obligated to show up. Right? I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but how many of you're on the serving schedule and you're like, crap, I'm serving tomorrow, right? I'm on the board. I am a group leader. I'm on the signs. I'm on whatever. And you're like, oh. But then you show up and then something cool happens. It's sort of like making an agreement that you're going to have a workout partner, and that workout partner is going to show up, and you're like, oh, I got to show up because I said I'd show up and I'd work out with him. And then afterwards you feel better. That happens. Number two, serving makes you rub shoulders with other Christians. Raise your hand, honestly, if you're an extrovert. You'll have no problem doing this. Raise your hand. As an extrovert, we love you extroverts, honestly. I will say as an introvert, I put out little jabs and stuff. Lisa's an extrovert. We love you because you create natural opportunities. Like, you don't need anybody else to create an opportunity to start a relationship with anyone else. But for those of us who are introverts, raise our hand. Higher. Come on, introverts. Higher. Raise the hand. Wouldn't you agree that we're not doing it on our own, right? Like, it's really difficult for us to gather up the internal combustion, to move that foot and open our mouths. It's just a little more difficult. And one of the great things about serving is you show up and it's like, it doesn't matter whether you're an extrovert or introvert, like there's this group of people. And oftentimes it's people that you normally wouldn't hang with, right? They're just different. And it just creates this really beautiful, interesting sort of mix of these people coming together from different backgrounds, which is exactly what you needed at the moment, right? Like, the last thing you need is more people that look and act and are the same age as you, right? We're looking for this diversity. We're looking for this uniqueness. And this is what I love about our church and what I love about the kingdom, is that God just takes these diverse people from backgrounds and brings us together. Okay, here's the third thing. God's Spirit comes alive inside those who serve. That if you feel like dead inside, like, I really don't feel close to God, like, one of the best ways to address that and sort of to recapture this idea of feeling close to God and excited about our faith is to start serving. Paul said this, Romans 12:11, never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord. Doug Moo is a New Testament scholar. He translates it this way. In zeal, do not be lazy, but be set on fire by the Spirit, serve the Lord. In other words, serving is sort of like this gateway opportunity that on the other side of serving is joy. On the other side of serving is zeal. So I handed out these cards. Can everybody pull these cards out right now? If you could do that, please. For those of you who are at home, or if you're at a cafe, wherever you are, a lot of people travel and they're tuning in. I'm just really glad that you're taking the time to do this. This is on the website as well. It's also on our app. This is a card for serving. And what we want you to do is, as you're leaving today in the lobby, and you can just do this on the app, but as you're leaving today in the lobby, what we want you to do is we want you to fill out, I want more information for serving, okay? And then what I want you to do is I want you to take it and fold it in half and drop it in the bowl on the way out. And then we have a fair outside. We have different ministries that are all here, out there. And right now, I want you to be honest, the majority of people in the room have already checked out, right? And you're like, you've already, in your mind, you're like, I'm not filling out the card. I'm not going to that thing. I'm not talking to anybody. And I just want you to know, as an introvert, I'm saying this because that's what I would be thinking, okay? And what I want you to do is I just want you to be honest about that. And I just want you to say, I'm going to take a simple step. And the first step could be just, you're going to fill out this card and put it in the bowl. And they'll send you some information about serving. And maybe that's all you can do today. And if that's all you can do today, okay. But maybe I'm going to fill this out, drop it in the bowl, and I'm just going to go to sort of walk down here and to just introduce yourself. And maybe what you do is you just say, I just want to thank you for giving people this opportunity to serve in this area. And you know, you never know. They could tell you about something, some opportunity, some place to serve. And you can go from that one talent person carrying one bag of gold to being that 5-bag person. Changing that person's life, that kid's life, that other person's life, and changing yours. We thank you so much, God, that the Bible is just this real, gritty thing. You get us. You get us because we all want to be the 1-talent person. Let somebody else do that 2-talent and 5-talent crap. Let them carry the bags of gold. I got too much to do. Too tired, too depressed, I'm too anxious, I have too many worries. But God, every single person in this room, on one hand, is incredibly loved and valuable. If they were the only person on the planet, you would have died for them. And on the flip side, we're all your slaves. We have no rights. As your slaves, we do what you tell us to do. We exist to do what you tell us to do. And if you tell us to serve and that life is going to be better because we're serving, we're going to serve. So I pray that you would just bless the hearts and the minds of people who are going to take steps today to begin to live out the end times lifestyle as a disciple of Jesus. We don't know if you're coming back a month from now, a year from now, 10 years from now, or 10,000 years from now. But we know that when you do come back from that long trip, we want you to be able to look at us and say, well done. You did it. Well done. Good and faithful servant. We thank you for this. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thanks for watching today's message. Make sure to check out Brian's new book, Finding Favor, God's Blessings Beyond Health, Wealth, and Happiness. To sign up for Brian's newsletter, please go to Brian's website at brianjones.com.